Okay, we are officially live. I welcome members to this morning's meeting of the Licensing Committee. Hopefully you all had your papers. We seem somewhat sparse on the ground. I'll kick off with the agenda with apologies for absence, but I've got to do some general housekeeping and bits and bobs first of all. So, welcome everybody. For those that don't know, I'm Councillor Fazakerley, Chair of Licensing Committee. Housekeeping rules: should the continuous fire alarm sound, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street, past the University's Park building. If you don't know where that is, follow someone that does. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including those making any deputations. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished, otherwise the camera will remain upon you. Members of the press and public, there appear to be no members of the press, are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating they did explicitly not wish to be recorded. We'll start off with introductions, with those that are sort of formally here, and then I'll go back to the agenda. So I'll begin. Well, I've already begun, haven't I? So I'm Councillor Fazakerley, Chair of today's meeting. If I can move to my left at the front, Ben.
Good morning, my name's Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the Council and I'll be advising the Licensing Committee.
Good morning everybody, my name's Nikki Humphreys and I'm the Licensing Manager.
I'm Sue Page and I'm from Financial Services.
Alison Harper, Democratic Services.
Councillor Stuart Brown from Fratton Ward. Dave Ashmore, one of the Fratton councillors.
Leon Madden, Councillor Nelson Ward.
Councillor George Magic of the Paulsgrove Ward.
Councillor Emily Shadwick for the Hilsey Ward and Vice Chair of this committee.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hilsey Ward.
Councillor Yinka Dinnerong, Charles Dickens Ward.
Oscar Shah, Councillor for Caution.
Okay, thank you everybody. That's those of us that are here in an official capacity. We move on to the agenda itself. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from absence from the following councillors: Councillor Ian Holder, Councillor Daniel Weems, Councillor Benedict Swan and Councillor Darren Sanders. Are there any other apologies? Nope. Okay. Declarations of interest. Members, does anybody have any declaration in regards to today's meeting? Okay, no, there are none. Minutes of the previous meeting. Some of us were on this committee, some of us weren't at that time. On page 5 of the report. Those of you that were there, can I have a proposer and a seconder for those? Councillor Brown proposing, Councillor Madden in the front seconding. So that is done. Yep, no problem with that one. We now move on to the only real item which is on the report.
Sorry, Chair, matters arising.
Oh, sorry, were there any? You didn't indicate. Sorry, yeah, matters arising.
Sorry. Could I I'm just interested in the one at the bottom of page 5, which is the mandatory training, which came out from the last recommendation. I don't know how far we've got with that, in mandatory training for members.
To confirm that subsequent to that meeting, the mandatory training was provided at key dates. That was both refresher training for members that have already sat on this committee, and there was also a session for new members to attend.
Anything else, Councillor Madden?
As long as, the concern was that people weren't getting training and was potentially sitting on subcommittees listening to appeals. That's not happening now and will never happen again. Yeah.
Certainly we have got those sessions in place and their work with learning development upon every new municipal year. So that training will always be provided for members.
Chair, if you don't mind me jumping in, with your leave. I would also stress that the training that was provided is also available for members. It was recorded and can be viewed and reviewed if members feel they want to.
Thank you very much.
you.
Okay, anything else in regards to matters arising? No, okay. Right, now, we went through a formal notification process for this, where we invited, as per standard, requests for deputations and questions. During the timescale for that, there were no requests for deputations or to speak. Consequently, I've come today and I found out there are at least one, possibly two individuals that now wish to take up that option. Technically, they are past the timescale admitted to do so, but I throw it open to members here. Is there any opposition, anybody speaking? How do members feel? Anyone got any problems with any of the two requests? No. Okay, so fine. So on that basis, before we actually start the report, can I ask those that have indicated to me, which is Mr. Sutherland, and is there someone else that wishes to say something? Okay. Well, if you both got microphones in front of you. So we'll start with what amongst yourselves. Just to confirm, ask legal, just to confirm the rules in regards to speaking at this meeting.
Yes, Chair, as you said, in accordance with the standing orders, strictly speaking, they're out of time, but you have discretion as Chair to allow them to speak. Technically, there ought to be a time limit imposed of a total time, depending on whether they're making deputations or asking questions, but no person ought to be allowed to speak for more than 6 minutes per deputation, and the total time ought not to be more than 12 minutes, but there's some flexibility, Chair, as long as you feel it's not extensively overrunning and dominating the meeting.
Okay, well, there are just two people that have indicated anyway, so that would seem sensible at 6 minutes each. So up to you, gentlemen, whoever wishes to go first. Remember to press the red button once you want to speak, and then turn it off when you've finished.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for allowing us to speak at this late stage. My name is Peter Sutherland. I'm the elected representative for the local Uber drivers in Portsmouth. Firstly, I would just say that whilst we understand that the licensing office is required to balance cost against revenue, we are concerned on several points. One, that the licensing office in this city is losing revenue because of the costs of licensing plates, badges, etc. And when I say losing revenue, the number of vehicles in this city that are no longer Portsmouth licensed but operate from the city and are Wolverhampton. Dare I mention the elephant in the room? You must all be aware of that. We estimate there are at least 50 to 60 Wolverhampton plated vehicles operating in this city. Work out the costs of revenue stream to Portsmouth City Council. They do so why? Partly because of cost, and secondly because of the age of vehicles, which is the point item 6 on your agenda that has been, in my opinion, sneaked in and should be a totally separate agenda item. So, referring now to the proposed increases in fees, which, again, I repeat, I do understand the requirement to balance budgets, but a 10% increase on a private operator fee, a 13% increase on a grant or renewal of a private hire vehicle licence, a 16.3% increase on a grant or renewal of a private hire driver licence. I won't go on, every fee has been increased. The biggest one is a vehicle retest at 19.25%. You've done your own calculations, you know what these percentages are like. I cannot understand how they're justifiable, and I look forward to an explanation from the licensing office. I would just say, just from general feedback in the last few days that I've managed to garner from my colleagues, there is great unhappiness, a lot of talk about licensing elsewhere, and I urge you all to take these matters into consideration when looking to approve or disapprove fee increases. Thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutherland. Pass to the next speaker. Sorry, can you ask you to repeat your name again? My fault.
So I'm George Podesco. I do hold an operator's license in Portsmouth under GRB Executive Cars. I focus mainly on long-distance airport transfers and chauffeur services. My biggest concern would be for this meeting, first of all, thank you for having me here today. My main goal for my presence today is the age of the vehicle discussion, because obviously I do run a chauffeur service, which means I do deal with high-profile individuals, and sometimes I do have to show up in a different kind of vehicle. It's not just the odd day-by-day vehicle. And for that reason, having to buy a brand new car that represents my business for what I do, it comes up at least 40 to 50,000 pounds to go and follow the age of minimum requirements, a 4-year-old vehicle. It's quite a big jump. You can call me like a sole trader. It's just myself. In order to keep up with these costs and still provide a good service and kind of like keep the business sustainable, having also these increased like new fees and everything is quite a big jump. But my main goal would be the age of the vehicle that I would like to have this put forward for the next meetings or even today, in order to make sure that we can all carry on doing what we do and we can all follow up and provide a good quality service, at least from my point of view as an airport company. And I think this is it. The rest, I'll just leave it to my colleague, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Okay, that's where our 2 late deputations. We now move across to the actual report itself. So what I'll do is I'll obviously pass over to Nikki, Licensing Manager, to outline the report. We have finance colleagues here that obviously can pick up the financial issues to it. We'll then go through anyone's got any questions that arise from that. Then we'll go into obviously general debate on the item before us. So Nikki, across to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Obviously, the purpose of the report today before you is to consider the review of fees and charges that are for licensing and registrations under your control as the Licensing Committee. Should point out that this review will not involve those fees and charges where the government set them centrally, because there's no discretion for you to have any input into those costs, income or expenditure arising from those fixed fees. So members, the report has set out to you the recommendations, and I won't go through those obviously because the report sets that quite clear. But from some background information, it's always been the aim of this committee to work towards total cost recovery where possible. That is because we cannot expect the General Council taxpayer to have to subsidise the fees and charges that can be raised by the Licensing Committee. And equally, you have an obligation to ensure that your budget meets cost neutral in the municipal year. The Local Government Association has published significant guidance for members when you're considering these matters, and they have been attached as Appendix A for you to have regard to in advance of this meeting. There are certain topics that have been covered in the report within that document for ease of reference, and members, you've got that at paragraph 3.3, which sets the scene for understanding the role of licensing, what we are here to do in terms of regulatory compliance and public safety, and obviously your role as members in ensuring that takes place. Anything that the fees and charges must be reasonable and proportionate to the cost of the processes involved. And most importantly, we cannot use income derived from licence fees to make a profit or act as a deterrent to people coming into the industries. Equally, it's fundamental that we have to keep our fees under review. And we accept that there hasn't been a review of fees since 2019, and all of us will understand that why that wasn't the case, because of the onset of COVID and the associated problems and difficulties, both financially and physically, to members of the licensed trade. So this is the first review of those fees and charges since 2019. But what we should be doing now we're out of that particular mire is we should be looking at those fees on an annual basis so that we can best address and adapt to any surpluses or deficits that may arise throughout any financial year. It would be fair to say to you members, and you have got Sue Page here from Finance who can put some more meat on the bones, without the increase in fees proposed to you today, there will be a deficit position. And this will be in direct conflict, both with the key principles of cost recovery that I've mentioned, and also the way that you've previously attempted to manage your budget in terms of costs recovery. If that cost isn't met, then the only alternative will be those costs to be subsidised by the council taxpayer. You will be aware that there has been recent changes to the licensing service, and in putting forward this budget, members, that there has been a number of proposed savings that will be implemented to offset the full cost of the deficit that the budget is currently facing without these fees and charges being implemented. And that is that we have deleted a full-time post within the establishment to offset those savings. We have also streamlined the processes for dealing with licence applications. We've also recovering prosecution costs from the courts as and where we can, and also that we are sourcing best value goods and services. So within the licensing service itself, we are attempting to deal with deficits and make savings where we can. Members, any decision you make today can be challenged. So therefore, it's important for you to look at how you're looking at the fees, what your proposals are, and if you choose to go to a different direction than that which has been set forward in the report, that you can provide clear reasons for that decision. Members, the proposed fees are set out in Appendix B, which I'm sure that you've already had sight of. There is a statutory process for fees and charges in relation to operator and vehicle fees, hence the recommendation that we go to publicly advertise those fees at the outcome of this meeting this morning. Appendix C to this report has yet another breakdown of the fees and costs that we are recommending to you, and that shows you the impact of that increase both on an annual, weekly and daily basis for the private hire and Hackney carriage licence holder fees. There is relevant case law, and I'm not going to, that you should take into account, and I'm not going to go through that with you. If you have any questions, you've got Ben, obviously, that can give you direction on those matters. So the final part of the report, which has been alluded to in the deputation as well, is that there's a further recommendation, members, in that we are seeking your approval to consult on the current minimum age limit for vehicles. As you're aware, the current policy states a vehicle cannot be no more than 4 years old when it's first licensed. So anything over 4 years to put new onto a licence is not currently permitted. You will know in February this year, when you were considering the statutory guidance for private hire and Hackney carriage, you extended the upper age limit from 8 years to 12 years. And what we're seeking as officers today is your permission to consult on that lower figure to look at extending that. We are conscious of the burdens that the trade have with various fees, petrol, all of their associated living costs, and we are then seeking to look at extending or looking at other ways that we can allow greater flexibility with vehicles coming into the licence industry without there being any detriment to the safety of that vehicle. So it's really asking your permission to go forward, Chair and members, to scope that for you and come back with a view to extending the current 4 years to allow greater flexibility. I don't propose to say any more, members, but no doubt you will want to hear from Susan Page in relation to the financial picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Yeah, we'll move on to Sue shortly. I mean, I don't think any of us want to sit here looking at a report suggesting increases to anybody. However, we are councillors, we are required to go through this, and this is pressures that Portsmouth City Council faces, like so many other local authorities and individuals. It's not a great time to live at the moment because of the pressures of cost of living. But I think it's important, I'm sure members have gone through the appendixes, and I'm sure some of the individuals here have as well. For those that haven't, can I just ask Sue now, can you just build on, just so people can be fully aware, the reasons why this is here, and simply the financial implications to it if we did and if we didn't. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think Nikki set it out. She has explained this, but we are... We need to go aim for full cost recovery, and we shouldn't be subsidising the licensing service with the general taxpayer. So we've developed a robust model for allocating and calculating the cost of the service, and this analyses it by category, and we've taken account of inflation, which we have had over the last 3 years. And Nikki has indicated that there have been savings made, and this has meant that we were starting from a position with a deficit, so the fees and charges have been set to recover that deficit and reflect the charges, the cost of inflation that we've had to bear. Over the last 3 years, inflation has actually been 18%, so the proposed increases are less than that.
Can I just ask, there was mention made, I mean, I'm sure members are aware, probably everybody in this chamber is aware, in regards to the issue about Wolverhampton. We're not the only authority that has, I suspect, become aware of how Wolverhampton has developed over the last few years. Their income, I think, to their licensing committee now is in the terms of millions. Do you just want to touch on that and any implications that you can see to us as a result of what's happened in Wolverhampton?
Chair, is that okay if I deal with that on behalf? We do have issues with vehicles out that are licensing themselves out of town and then working mainly in the city. This is a national problem to all licensing authorities. We are aware that Wolverhampton has taken the major role, if you like, in pulling in licenses from other areas. I understand that their fees this year are particularly low because they had a 2 million reserve, I'll call it a reserve, within their budget, and they have had to drastically reduce their fees and charges this year to reflect that reserve and to reduce it. We did an exercise of looking at a comparison of our licence fees to Wolverhampton, but unfortunately we are not in a position to be able to do that simply because of economies of scale. They have tens of thousands of licences, and we can only achieve those licence fees being reasonable and proportionate in doing so. So we are, I haven't seen sort of anecdotally a major move. We are still, as Mr Sutherland said, around 60 to 80 vehicles, but we have a fleet of 981 licensed vehicles in Portsmouth. So we're not at a tipping point in terms of the effect. And unfortunately, it will only be through national legislative change that nationally we will see the situation as seen in Wolverhampton be challenged.
Thank you, Nikki. Right, so you've heard both from the licensing manager and from our accounts advisor in regards to this. I throw it open. Any questions as a result of those? Okay, so first of all, Councillor Brown, then Councillor Manager.
Thank you, Chair. So questions for Nikki and probably for Sue as well. Just to get some clarification, we said that the current schedule of fees is running at a deficit. The new schedule, is that to bring us to revenue neutral including the deficit or revenue neutral moving forward? So is that recovering the previous deficit as well, or just revenue neutral from the costs moving onward?
What we did was we looked at the costs without any fee increase, and that's where the deficit was established. By setting the fees at the level we have, we are recovering that deficit. I would say that if we make a surplus or a deficit on the year, because you can't always predict the actual volumes, that gets carried forward and reflected in the setting of the fees next year.
So essentially moving forward to an annual review, we're going to be always 1 year behind on either deficits or surpluses and amending the fees to bring us back to zero for the previous year. Does that make sense?
Yes, we've balanced the budget in year based on this set of fees, and then we'd look at it again next year and see if there are any more efficiencies or if we've made a surplus or whatever, and reflect that in looking at the fees, in looking at a review next year. It's not necessarily saying it would change anything, it would go up or down. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Given that almost every item on the schedule has either stayed the same or increased, how come there's been a reduction in the renewal for SUVs?
Okay, Councillor Chair, this is basically down to the fact that we are looking at our costs and reasonable and adjusting what fee is proportionate given the work that is undertaken. And simply put, that the cost of those licences are too high, and therefore, having regard to the advice of the LGA and working towards cost recovery, that's why those fees have come down.
Thank you very much. Councillor George Madwick.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, section 6 that talks about the time of vehicles. I think that should be taken off today's report. I think it should be put into its own report. I think that's quite an emotive topic, and I think we need to flesh it out a lot further. So I think that, with your permission, Chair, I think really we should strike that off the report today, move it for a month and a half, 2 months' time, and have a separate debate around that topic, because it's way too emotive and way too important just to chuck in a report about fees. So that's my first point. Secondly, in relation to Wolverhampton, as you know, I'm the spearhead of the anti-Wolverhampton brigade. I can't stand them, and I think their practices are awful. I'm wondering, Chair, whether we could sit down at some point as a committee and any other members and figure out a way that we could offer benefits that don't cost our council money to the drivers at licence in Portsmouth. We need some incentive for people to stay within the Portsmouth Authority, especially if fees are going up. There must be something that we can do as a licensing authority, whether that be using bus lanes or access to free parking in certain areas or something that we can do that is exclusive only to Portsmouth licensed vehicles. So hopefully, Chair, if you wouldn't mind your time at some point in the next couple of weeks, we could go through that and figure out a way. In relation to the fees, I'm disappointed to see all the fees go up and the sex establishment fees either remain the same or go down. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that the renewal going down by 20-something%, £750 off is not appropriate, Chair. I think that should certainly be increased. I think all the sex establishment fees should be increased, certainly in line with what we're asking the private vehicle guys to pay. there's a lot for you to write down here. I'd also like to know, obviously it says in relation to the private hire vehicle, magnetic signs, adhesive, so on and so forth. They've gone up obviously 250% in some cases. I realise it's a different size and stuff, but I'm assuming we manufacture those through a supplier and so on and so forth. So I'm just wondering why they've jumped up by 250% in some cases. That seems quite large. And finally, Chair, I'm not overly happy with the fee increases, to be completely honest with you. They are above inflation. They are above what the civil servants' pay packet increases. We're asking for them to pay more money to keep their career going on than what we receive as councillors, the civil service pay as an increase, so on and so forth. So I think it should be in line with inflation, or certainly in line with the civil servants' pay packet. I understand there'll be a budget deficit, I get that. But I do always struggle when we talk about, you know, it shouldn't be funded by council taxpayers when our beautiful buses in the city are funded by council taxpayers into the millions and millions and millions and millions, and everyone says that's an amazing thing, but yet taxis, you know, lo and behold, council taxpayers fund towards taxis. I always find that a really strange point. So I think that we should be a bit more measured and keep it more in line. So that's everything I've got to say so far. Thank you.
You didn't forget anything, George?
Of course I did. I've skipped a few parts, Jason, but that's because I keep talking.
Next on, Councillor Madden.
Thank you very much. Actually, Chair, the bit about the minimum age limit for licensed vehicle, I took a different slant to that. We've discussed it in the past numerous times, and I was only going to suggest that we take A, B and C as one section to be voted on, and then D is a separate section to be voted on. I think it then keeps it on the agenda and keeps the ball rolling. I'm not too sure. I think it probably needs a bit more debate, that's all. So I'm suggesting that we have two parts of the meeting, if you like, Chair. We've had the deputation on that. If you need legal advice on that, I want to come back.
Okay, your legal advice, Ben?
In relation to the recommendation D, it's simply that the licensing committee approves the preparation of a further report for consideration in relation to the current policy. So there's no decision to be made on the current policy today in any event. It's simply requesting that the matter comes back to the licensing committee and allows consultation in the meantime, so it's properly considered. Certainly.
Councillor Brown?
Sorry, I've got a question specifically on that. Does that mean that if we vote to reject the new fees, we are therefore voting to reject the request for the next review? Because it's all built into the same recommendation set.
I would suggest that voting, if members are inclined to vote differently on different things, that the recommendations be taken in turn.
Right, well, there's a number of things to come back on. Councillor Magic said I was furiously scribbling things down here. I'll come back to when we actually come to the voting, once we're clear that no one's got any more questions and there's no more need for clarity over everything. Nikki, you nodded at me earlier on during the course of what's been said by Councillor Madgwick. Do you want to come back on some of those?
No, Glenn's just dealt with the issue in terms of the age limit report. There's no intention to do anything. It was just to seek your agreement that we bring a report back to you in the early part of next year with options for you to look at for increasing the age. So there is no decisions being made outside of this committee. It's to prepare that information for you.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Madden, still continue.
Yeah, sorry, that's fine. I mean, I know it's not a decision to be made, but I just thought it's the same thing as Councillor Brown was saying, whether in fact, you know, if the lot's kicked out, that's kicked out as well. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? Because it would be saying we don't agree with it. Recommendation 4, D.
I'm not wanting to take any, Ben is your legal advisor, but my understanding is you have 2A, you've got recommendation A to D, and you would, is that my understanding, Ben, that you would deal with those recommendations A to D?
Certainly that would be the initial approach, but if there's if there's a proposal to amend the recommendations so that they're dealt with differently, that would need to be proposed and seconded and voted upon. But technically speaking, but I can't honestly see that there's anything that really ought to be causing any kind of issues with regards to recommendation D, because it's simply stating that the matter will be put out for consultation and be returning, which is precisely, I think, what members are actually asking for in any event. So it's entirely in line with what members seem to be... Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, can I ask anybody got mobile phones? Can you switch your mobile phones off or on silent, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I don't think it's in any way actually causing an issue. I think what the recommendation is proposing is entirely in line with what members seem to be saying they want to be happening in any event, as well as the trade, that this matter goes out for proper consultation and proper participation by all parties, and then returns for a decision to be made once that's complete, that process is complete, and not some decision being made today. That is clearly not the intention of the report.
Thank you. That's my interpretation too. However, members, if you do wish to change that, you can do, if there's sufficient support to do it. But I would concur with what our legal advisor has said. And it would seem sensible to me that basically what's been asked by Councillor Madgwick, in effect, and mentioned by some of the deputies there, is in effect what will be delivered if we do this anyway. So, you okay with that, George?
As long as we're voting on the recommendations separately, that makes sense. If we're voting on them collectively, then it doesn't make sense, because obviously if members wish to vote differently on the different topics, that needs to be made available to them. So if we're voting on recommendation A, then B, then C, then D, rather than as a collective, if that makes sense.
Well, again, it's down to the report as it stands. So technically, if we vote, we'd be voting on this, unless, of course, there is a proposal
Right, then
to split down that you want to vote for them individually.
Then can I propose to split them down individually, please, and have a
You
second?
can, and I'm sure you'll get a second.
I'll second that.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Sorry? Okay, well, there's an indication. I'm not going to that immediately, but that's to be that's to be voted on us once we get to it by the rest of you.
Chair, sorry to interject.
Yeah.
Of course, with your leave. The only advice that I would give the committee is that if there is an intention to strike D from the recommendations, so that oh, okay, I understand. As I say, because all that would actually achieve is to lengthen the process for the age restrictions.
Right, okay, so before I get down to how we decide on how we vote on the report, we've had no one else indicate question. Sorry, Councillor Madden, you've still got more?
Sorry, you're confusing me, Chair. I mean, I think we started with questions, so I didn't want to intervene at that stage. So Councillor Bryan asked some questions, and then there were comments made about various things. But I actually wanted to speak to the report itself. But I'd like to say some things about Wolverhampton. I mean, Councillor Madgwick, as I recall, did put a notice of motion in some time back about the concerns that we had with drivers from Wolverhampton. It's not only Wolverhampton, of course, it's surrounding areas as well. You know, I parked behind a license plated car from Havant yesterday. So it's things need to be looked at, I think, in relation to that. But I'm pleased and aware that in fact, Nikki has told us that in fact there's only 50 or 60 vehicles registered anyway in relation to nearly 1,000 that we've got. So in one sense it's a small percentage, but in another sense we are losing revenue from people registering their vehicles outside of Portsmouth. I think that needs to be something to be looked at. Chair, on the report itself, I think the first thing that hit me, of course, was the D one, and I think we've resolved that now as to whether it should be included or not. And I think we'll make that decision later. And we've all been through the cost of living, right? We all know about how it's affected us, and it's costing us still a lot more than it did before. Well, Trustonomics, I suppose. I mean, that's the one thing that set it in motion, wasn't it? And I think I do look to see whether it's what has been proposed today is appropriate and indeed is proportionate. And I've come to the conclusion that it is. I think we've got to, as councillors, we've got to be cognizant of the concerns, that we have about massive surpluses as well, but surpluses are easy, aren't they, in the sense that you can spend them, and make life easier for people. And I'm thinking in the general terms of the general fund itself. So when we have surplus, we would go and spend them. When we've got minuses or deficits, then it's a different story. Now, we've always gone in this authority with seeking to have licensing, not to make any, you can't make any money. You can't. We've known that for years. But certainly to ensure that there's not a deficit. And I think, to be fair, I've been dealing with licensing for the last quarter of a century. And as I recall, this is the first time we've had a report of this nature. I think that everything in the past has somehow or other been managed. And when you're in a deficit or heading for a deficit, and I think it's wrong to, now that it's been pointed out to councillors, to allow a deficit to arise at the end of the financial year, I think that is a wrong thing to do. And if you, as an individual or as a company or as an organisation, were heading for a deficit, well, you do something about it. And that's what this is attempting to do. It's not only saying let's increase various parts of the licence, it's also saying we are looking at ourselves. And if you look, I think it's 3.18 in the report, actually shows what the licensing department itself is doing. In the grand scheme of things, Chair, the licensing department is fairly small. It's not a massive organisation. It's not like traffic and transportation. It's not like planning. Here we are with a very small setup, very tightly run, and I have to give them credit for that over the many years that I've been involved in it. Nobody wants to increase anything. Of course we don't. But I think that we have a duty to the taxpayer of Portsmouth, and we have under the legislation that there is at the minute to seek to make full recovery. I think that's the word that has been used. I will go along with these recommendations, Chair. I don't like happening, but the report does tell us, and I've forgotten this, that we haven't reviewed charges like this since in the last 4 years, and we have seen a lot of inflation there, and inflation's gone down, but I'm not sure that people's wages or whatever they're getting is keeping up with it. We're all suffering in relation to this cost of living, and I do believe that the proposals in front of us are appropriate and proportionate, and therefore I will back them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. It's now in the stage, and if somebody's got any late questions, any other comments directly in relation to... I can't take any from members of the public, I'm afraid. This is just for the committee. So, unfortunately, you did not indicate at the beginning you wanted to speak. We've moved past the deputation stage now, sir. So we are discussing at the committee. They've had the chance to do questions. I can't take any late questions or comments at this point, I'm afraid. This is for the committee now to discuss. You didn't mention me at the beginning you wanted to speak. You had the opportunity at the beginning. So. Well, can I ask why you didn't indicate that at the beginning then? You only had 2 speakers.
We raise our hand, but no one focuses us. We are newly appointed World Hackney Diver representative.
So it's entirely a matter for you, Chair. Perhaps you might want to extend the same opportunity for them to just speak for a short while now at this stage, but it's entirely your discretion.
Councillor Shah, sorry.
Just I was saying, I think if they did mention that before, then I would say better to let them speak.
Councillor Simpson?
Yeah, let's hear them, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Okay, I wasn't aware they wanted to speak. Sorry, you may have raised, perhaps I missed it, but okay. Well, slightly breaking protocol, but I mean I can bring you in. You're aware where we are. We're about to come to a decision. I was asking for some other speakers. Again, if you're speaking together or individually. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you can ask, can you introduce yourself when you speak, and then bearing in mind the timescale, okay?
I'm Minal Kanti Ghosh, newly appointed as a trade representative of Portsmouth Hackney carriage drivers, all. So today I'm here. Thank you all councillor and licensing officer here, and allow me to speak a little bit. I'm see the renewal chart, everything. So my one few question is here. So why the Hackney drivers fee and private air fees is different? 310 and 162, nearly 118 pound difference. And same the badge. The Hackney driver renewal badge is higher, is 192, and private hire is 110, is much difference. And one more thing, you increase the price in the Hackney vehicle livery is 24 pound to 48 pound, almost 100% up. So it looks very expensive because stay to a jump 24 pound to 48, and then the normal was is 20 pound to 40 pound. And one more thing is in this COVID situation, we work couple of years, almost 1 year, all Hackney drivers, we come out, not even come out from the house to work, but we're not getting any discount for renewal fees. We pay full money couple of 2-3 years, which we're not working, we're not earning any money. So suddenly if we're increasing now, because we are not stable yet, because nowadays, especially in Hackney drivers, we are now earning much less than before due to introducing so many private air company in Portsmouth now. Even some private air company coming outside and pick up our job from our rank even. So we are earning very less money. So I am recommended at that time we keep same renewal fees at least couple of years when everything get back to normal, as everything price is going up, all these things. And one more thing, in Portsmouth Hackney drivers, there is 2 meter running in the town now. One is old, one is new. New updating, we losing money in short job, and old meter, they're losing money is long job. So I already have a meeting with the Portsmouth City Council licensing office to update and make a 1 meter, because it's not good to running 2 meter in one city in same taxi, same hour, same all Hackney drivers taxis. So 50% old meter still running, and 50%, because I update new, so I'm losing every small job 20, 30, 40p. Every single day I losing 4-5 pound, maybe if I got more small job. And when the old meter going out of town, they're losing also money. So this is very serious thing. Even customer give a complaint, then it will be big issue. They said, "Hoy, today I got one taxi, I got this much money, and next day, same company taxi, I'm paying more money." So I'm requesting all councillor and licensing officer, please sorting out this problem as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add anything, sir? Yeah, did you want to say anything, sorry?
My name is Ghulam Mohammed. I'm the representative with Mr. Ghosh here regarding Portsmouth Hackney cars. It's my first time, so I'm a little bit nervous, but thank you for giving me the chance. We are around about 80 of us representing Portsmouth Hackney cars, and all of us sat and thought about this. If you go back around about 2020 when we had the lockdown and the COVID, we paid a full fee of the plate for that year, which we did not work at all for that year. I did phone this licensing office, and I personally talked with someone there and complained that we are not going to go out, we're not going to work. Good 12 to 14 months, I did work on private, on like Uber and Just Eat delivery, but no taxi. But they took full charge of the full plate test for that year. And within a couple of years, they obviously taking the points that regarding they want to raise the money for the renewal. I think it's a very hard time even now. as a Hackney driver, if you come out to the ranks and see the driver sitting there for a long time, and the jobs are not as much as what it used to be quite a few years back, which means we are not busy as we used to be. At the same time, saying that, I think in Portsmouth, this weekend I have seen quite a few cars coming from outside. New Forest, Havant, and a lot of other cars, places they come along, and they're working here in ranks and other places. And some of the cars which you have made law for us to have, so many of us Hackney drivers have changed cars, 20,000, 25, 26, myself over 30,000, 32 plus. And here these cars are coming along. I've just seen a car which one of the back lights not working. It's a 2015 car. It looks damaged from both sides. The age is a lot worse now. So they are having cheap cars coming from outside and working in our cities, which we have pressed us to buy new cars, so expensive. And end of the day, you're not supporting us that we are local. I've been here 45 years, but 7, 8 years I've been working as a taxi. But I think the trade in taxi is very hard. I don't know how many cars should be working for Portsmouth as a small city, but so many cars come from outside. I think it's just putting too much pressure on the Portsmouth local cars and Portsmouth Hackney cars that we are going through a tough time. So I would recommend kindly take notice of these things, and my colleague has said a few things as well, that we need to support each other. We are colleagues of each of us from each city, from this city. So Hackney cars and every other taxi driver would like to ask for help that the renewal fee either be frozen or either be taken even down, because end of the day we are struggling. If you send some people to the ranks, and you will see the people how we struggle. So my recommendation is that you freeze or either make the price a bit lower, help us out, because we have spent quite a big chunk of money. People have taken loans. People have borrowed money for big amount. We don't need to change for 25, 30,000, 35,000 pound car. But people have been pressed and they have bought the cars. So my recommendation is that every one of you, please kindly think and support that the local cars should be given the opportunity to run and continue working hard on this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, both of you. Does anybody want to come back? Nikki, do you want to come back on any of those points?
Just in relation to a couple of the members, just so there's no confusion, the reason why in the proposed scale of fees that there's a difference between private hire and Hackney carriage is basically because we cannot cross-subsidise from private hire fees to the cost of Hackney. And because there's less Hackney carriage vehicles and drivers than there are private hire, then that's why Hackney carriages are having to take a bigger hit, because we don't have as many licences and I can't use private hire subsidy to make those even. Secondly, the issue about the meter rates, I know it's on sort of off the agenda in terms of this report, members, but I think it may well be that, as you're aware, with meters, we set, as a licensing authority, the maximum rate of fares that a driver can charge. For Hackney only, private hire regulate their own fees. But it is the maximum. So if there are Hackney carriage drivers that are working on a lower rate of fares than what the maximum is, there's nothing unlawful about that. That is just something that, as long as the fares don't exceed the maximum, they are quite entitled to charge less if they feel they wish to do so.
Thank you. Right, we were in the stage where we were taking now comments on the report itself. Any views you wish to express? Councillor Madden said his. Any indications from anybody else in regards to actually commenting on the report? Councillor Madgwick, Councillor Shah, were you indicating or not? No, okay. So, Councillor Madgwick.
Make a few comments, Jason, as obviously I had questions earlier. If we're going to the vote imminently, which it seems like it seems like it's my last chance to speak. As I say, I think hopefully members vote to separate the recommendations so that we can do that, because I am mindful to push the report for the vehicle lengths to a separate session, and obviously look into that would be fine. I just can't morally vote chair on a report that lowers sex licence fees whilst increasing taxi fees. I don't think the fee report is appropriate. I'm not sure what my Liberal colleagues and my Labour colleagues feel, but I'm sure decreasing sex fees whilst increasing taxi fees is not appropriate to councillors in this room. I really did feel that strongly about it. And as I say, I know it's a deficit, and I'm not saying don't put up fees. Please don't sit there and think I'm a businessman at the end of the day. I'm not saying that we've got to have a deficit. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying I think that bearing in mind this is the first time it's come here. I just think we need to sit back and have a little look at the fees, see how we can make it fairer for our friends over here in the taxi trade, whilst making it fair on our council tax burdens as well at the same time. And I just don't think the fee report that we've had today is appropriate for us to vote on currently. So I am mindful to reject the report and the fees with the intention to hopefully ask officers to come back with a more appropriate fee structure. That's my point, Chair. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Madden?
Chair, sorry, I'm a bit confused about what is being proposed. You see, I think it's either for or against, isn't it? But it seems to me what Councillor Madgen is proposing is a deferment of the decision today for officers to go back and reconsider, particularly in relation to hire and private, whatever, and then come back to us. So if he's proposing a deferment, I think I'd be happy to listen to that.
Right, as I have it and understand at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to vote on a proposal to take the recommendations separately, okay, which we've not yet done, but we will move to do so at some point. This stage is to take any comments from members. They can say what they wish, obviously within reason, whether they agree with the report, whether they want any changes or whatever. If they wish to propose anything further, and you've touched on the fact that Councillor Madgwick said he didn't seem in favour of voting for the report and would like a deferment, he can suggest a deferment, and if there's a seconder, that will come before you as well. As it currently stands, before we do any of those votes, the report is here. Once you've all had your say, we then move into it. I'll do a little sum up in the end before we go to the vote, but I'm in your hands because I'm chair of the committee, but we are a committee in collective. So whatever we choose collectively in the majority to do, we obviously will do. So in regards to the deferment that you made there, I'll invite Councillor Madgwick later on if that's what he wants to do. He can make a request for a deferment. That's entirely up to him. But as it stands, this is currently the report. Once anyone's had their say, then we'll go down to the bit of how we actually vote on it. So is there anybody else that wishes to make any comment in regard? There clearly is. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Sue, I think obviously we've got the issue here that because we're looking to recover the deficits from the existing schedule, the increases are possibly higher than they otherwise would be. How much of a financial impact would there be if we looked to recover that deficit over a longer period of time to mitigate the increases this time? Is that something that could be figured in?
I think I suppose we could look at it, but the problem we've got is that, how would we cover the deficit in the short term? We'd be subsidising it from the general fund, wouldn't we? That's the issue.
So what I was thinking was a schedule of increases over, smaller increases over a longer period of time to bring the deficit back under control, but over a longer frame, rather than just a 1 year, we're going to fix the deficit in one fell swoop, or just the finances not work like that.
We have an obligation as a committee. Forget the administration, obviously there's an administration, there's also a committee. This licensing service has an obligation to balance its books. Fair enough, simple enough, happens in lots of other organisations. This is a recommendation before you of how, after lots of discussion, lots of delegation, and obviously I don't come here having never looked into this before, and I'm sure others, members of the committee, have had their opportunity to speak with Nikki in Finance as well. This is as a result of what we've met. Now, if this is a failing to some members, so be it. But this is what we have come up with. No one wants to see, as I said earlier, the taxi trade do a decent job in the city, okay? They work, they, in my opinion, they should be considered a public service, which they are. We're looking at opening up bus lanes to them. So there's no doubt that taxis provide a very useful service, okay? Nobody wants to heap fees on anybody. The difficulty is there's a responsibility of the local authority to actually meet its financial requirements. And we are in this situation, a difficult situation nationally, which people will know wherever they're coming from, that, you know, it's a challenging time. I don't feel comfortable sitting here having to suggest we increase charges, but unless anyone's got any other practical means of how we can avoid by doing it this way, then I'd be likely to hear it. But at the moment, nothing has come forward.
Well,
However,
I think time, Chair, time. I mean, this report came out a couple of weeks ago. I certainly haven't had the opportunity or chance to speak to anybody in finance to look at figures, and I would love that chance. So, you know, time, Chair, is how we come back with a better, more fair option. You know, and I'm not talking a year, a couple of months.
that's your view, yeah, sorry, Nikki, you want to come in as well?
Members, I just, in terms of that delay and deferment, and see, you can see Sue has answered the question from Councillor Brown, we will not be able to come back to you with any deferment, with any better picture than we can offer you today in terms of managing your budget. This is the bottom line that we're offering you to meet your budget requirements. You know, we're looking here, let me give you an example, the impact that you are concerned about, that you wish officers to say, how can we negate this? If I give an example on the renewal of a private hire vehicle, we're talking at 7p a day. If we look at a private hire driver, 5p a day. How can officers get those increases down lower than a 5p a day cost to the trade? I don't think for members it's an unreasonable budget that we put forward for you to meet your requirements as a licensing committee. If we defer, we have private hire renewals coming up in the end of January, which would be to the tune of 200,000. If you don't consider and determine this application, then I'm sure Sue will reinforce to you that you will have a deficit position this year. By making a decision today to defer, it will be now in a deficit, your budget.
Sorry, Ben, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I probably do need to advise the committee. There has been some mention of a moral objection to the reduction in sexual entertainment venue fees at the same time as the increase in other areas. I do need to remind the committee that moral objection, so far as sexual entertainment venues is concerned, is very clearly prohibited by case law and ought not to be becoming a factor in your decision making, either in terms of granting licenses or setting fees. But I think the issue that the point raised underlines is the fact that, and needs to be very clearly and plainly set out, is that a surplus in one area cannot be used to cross-subsidise another area, whether it even be within taxi licensing, as you've already heard. So if sexual entertainment venue licensing continues to amass a surplus which is sitting there doing nothing, it's only going to lead to challenge. It's simply going to sit there, be unused, and then the licence holders will rightly be entitled to challenge the authority on the basis that it's simply overcharging for that administrative function which the fee needs to cover. So I just needed to make that plain.
No, it's a very fair point. And this is the problem, it's the difficulties that we face, and it's being able to portray the message so people understand what both sides are. I understand what the tax rate are. Aside, before we actually go on to the vote business, in regards to some of the things that you've raised today, I'm more than happy either to arrange a meeting aside from this. And a meeting, if you feel you just want to speak to us as councillors, you don't want the other aspects of the city council in with it, then by all means we can do that. We can hire a hall somewhere, taxi reps can come, you can speak to me. if anyone from the committee wants to come along, they're most welcome too. You can give us your points. The difficulty that I am in today and the committee is in today is just being highlighted here. It's the obligation on us as councillors, and I know it doesn't sit easy, but we have to meet our requirements to do a budget. Councillor Magic, I understand why he's saying that. I've come to numerous licensing committee meetings before. I've received cheers in the past. I think the days of Viv Young used to come along. Because if you see there's an injustice, you want to speak up against it. And there's been all issues in the past where taxi drivers have rightly raised things they haven't felt fair to them. So it's not that we've got closed ears to you. It's just that we're in a less than, what's the best word? A less than great situation to be in, where we're faced with the legalities of what's placed on us, with the needs and the balances. You're residents as well. So our obligation is, one, to the council, but it's also to you to listen to what you've got to say because of the service that you provide. I'm trying to get a happy balance in this, and the difficulty is the pressures of funding compared to that. Now, what Nikki's highlighted there in regards to the funds, okay, she says 5 pence a day, but you say, well, that's 5 pence a day, so that's 35 pence a week, which becomes more and more. So it's an increase without a shadow of a doubt. So I don't feel comfortable with it, but I feel in a situation where I cannot, so far, resolve a different way in which we can avoid bringing the report that we've got here today. We can look at different parts of it. Bear with me, Mr. Sutherland, please. We can look at different parts of it, and we probably will do when we come down to vote to it, but I think it's been clear from what the officers have said and from what some members have said, this is the situation that we're in. Now, we have to make a decision. The decision could be deferral, if that's what the committee decides to vote, but you've heard what the implications are if we do come to a stage of deferral. If we reject it, if that's another proposal that comes forward, then we're at square one, or we can... It's open to us all to make a decision. We've heard the arguments that have come through. There's still some time to comment. Mr. Sutherland, I will allow you another chance. It's not normal, but to be fair, come back on that. But we will shorten, and then we'll go through to Councillor. So, Mr. Sutherland, first of all.
Chair, I'm most grateful. Thank you very much. My only comment was going to be that it's just, from where I sit, unfortunate that here we are on the 27th of November looking at a budget that you are now going to be told, or have been told, that you must pass, otherwise though you are going to incur a deficit. That doesn't leave you, the decision-making body, much time to make much of a decision. I echo the point made by Councillor Madgwick. It's just unfortunate that it's come at this late stage, and we are being looked at to provide the cost balance, and I said earlier in my statement, Chair, that I understand that the licensing budget must be balanced, and we're expected to do that. But you're looking at a group of people to generate that income, and we get nothing in return from this city. We don't get bus lanes, we don't get age of vehicles, we just get increase in fees. And so we feel collectively, my Hackney colleagues and myself speaking as a private hire licence holder, we feel very aggrieved by it, and it's just, in my opinion, unfortunate that you, the decision-making body, are being told that you have to vote for this now, otherwise you're going to be in a deficit. That, from a timing point of view, for me, is wrong. Thank you, Chair.
Again, thank you for your comments, Mr. Sutherland. I don't want to drag, bus lanes is more of an issue for transport, but certainly my understanding was we were supporting the use of bus lanes. I don't know what's gone wrong in regards to that, but certainly if we hold, and I say I will give a commitment, I'll arrange for a meeting where reps can come to me or taxi drivers can come to me. Give me your points. I'm not going to sit there as a bureaucrat. I mean, I hardly look like a bureaucrat, I guess. So genuine points that you want to make, by all means do so. But I appreciate that's not today, that's a different day. But I give you my word, I'll listen to what taxi reps do and what taxi drivers say. I'll invite members of the committee if they want to come along to it, then we can look at what we can get from that. I understand what you're asking for, and I totally don't disagree. The service that you provide, there should be some incentives that we can give to you as a local authority. That has to be decided. The reason this report has taken so long to get here is because we have looked, I appreciate George, I'm not sure if Emily, if you've been involved, I don't know, but certainly in regards to looking at where we can get to and how we can avoid as the increases any worse than this has taken some months to go through. Okay, so it's not the fact that we've just left it to say, no, it's now or never. What, sorry?
So I think Councillor Hink's been trying to say something for quite a while. So.
Yeah, but I will come back.
Even before you.
Oh, sorry, okay, I'll come back in a second. Right, so, now I've completely forgotten what I was saying. God damn it, okay. Right, anyway, I'll come back to it. Right, we've got two, so I had Councillor Adinair and then Councillor Simpson. Fair enough, okay.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I think, to me, there should be a way around this. Increasing fuel, I'm not in support, to be honest. And other thing is this, even if they need to pay the increased fee, what about other people coming from outside, taking their businesses from them? So it doesn't make business sense. So how are they going to raise the money? How are they going to get the money if they have other people coming from outside the city? So we need to listen to their concerns and issues and get it addressed, because we are all here because of them. We are representing the community. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Simpson, Councillor Shah after that.
I don't really want to be stating the obvious, but why has it been given to us so late? Why is it so late? And then once we got it, why is it like, oh, okay, we've given you this late report and you've got to make a decision tomorrow? It's still like stating the obvious, but I want to put it out there.
I say it's hardly been ideal. The reason why we're so late, and Nikki, you might want to make it clear, is the fact that we've looked at this from many angles to try and get a lower, to balance the budget in effect. It's that deficit. Licensing is somewhat unique in the fact that, I mean, you probably explain it better than I will, but as a service, in effect, sorry, can I pass over to you? Just to clarify how licensing, in effect, different, without trying to bore you all senseless, but how licensing somewhat different from other regulatory committees. I did say you.
Yes, it's.
So can you move the microphone across?
The cost needs to be covered. It's self-balanced. It's got to be balanced. It's not like a service that's paid by the council taxpayers. The local government guidance is that we have cost recovery, and we have spent a couple of months at least going through the costs, robustly analysing them. Nikki's put forward savings and brought the costs down, but they are what they are. We've got inflation from our our contractors to take into account, and we've analysed the costs over the different elements of the licensing service. So it has been a thorough piece of work.
Thank you. Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Chair. Just actually, as a member of this House, I'm listening. I think they are one of the stakeholders, what we are discussing today. They need to be listened what their concerns are, and obviously the other side, the staff need to be listened, and then the report should come in the House and to discuss. Because at this moment, I think there is an issue. They haven't been listened as far as I can see, and they got the concern need to be discussed with them, and then they can be taken to the staff. That's the concern, what you can do. Yes, increasing the cost. Obviously, everything is increasing. We have to do it. There must be a budget. We can't go and use some other funds from other departments. That can't be, that's not sustainable. But we need to listen them, and then we need to go to the staff, and then come to the House what we can do and how we can increase. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Simpson, Councillor Madgwick and Councillor Sanders.
Just to go back, I mean, what I don't understand here is taking you this report that's very thorough, has gone through different stages, but don't you think it would have been potentially wise to have spoken to the chair or to other committee members through that process, saying, look, we're looking at this and it's projecting that we're going to have to put these fees up? And it's not, what I mean is, like, I think by having it almost working in silence until the end, and then saying, well, you know, you're going to make this decision now, it's not very helpful to us. And I think maybe, you know, I can't obviously speak for the chair, but maybe a pre-meeting to this might have helped with there not being so jumped on the committee as a whole.
Thank you, Russell. Councillor Madrick.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, welcome, Darren. I'm not sure if you have any interest or not, but I just wanted to ask for clarification, Chair, from our legal team. As you're so late, Mr. Sanders, but always welcome, of course, because you know you're one of my favourites. But obviously, because Councillor Sanders hasn't listened to the debate in any capacity and the debate's changed, is it appropriate for him to have to vote today? That's a question to the legal advisor.
Apologies, I hadn't noticed the late arrival. My advice has always been consistent on the matter that members ought to be present for the entirety of the debate for an issue if they're going to partake in the vote. But clearly it's a matter for the chair to rule upon, but that's always been my advice.
To be fair, I've actually fallen foul of that myself in the past at a licensing committee. So that has always been our call. So I'm afraid, Councillor Sanders, whilst you're here and you can participate, I'm afraid I don't think I can include you for the vote. I also need to ask if you have any interest. Thank you, Councillor Madrick. Yeah.
That's right. One of the reasons I'm late, I was talking to your mum. I'll tell her off later, I tell you honestly. Anyway, thank you for that, George. And good morning to you as well. Firstly, Jason, apologies for being late. I've had to deal with stuff in my own ward, which is one of the reasons I've been late here. I have, as far as I know, I've got no interests to declare. Well, not any normal interests to declare, but one thing I do know, and I'm happy not to take part in the vote if that's okay. I understand why it's similar in planning. But I have two issues relating to this. And the first is I'm probably the only other person in this room who actually has a ring-fence budget, which is called the Housing Revenue Account, that I have to deal with. And so it's two separate issues. Firstly, I understand the issues around full cost recovery. We've had to change, as far as council housing is concerned, issues around repairs to focus much more heavily on building safety because costs are going through the roof and the Tory government has decided to cap our income. So therefore, I'm used to these sorts of decisions that are taking place and they're not nice. As a part of process, I would agree with what Councillor Simpson has just said, which is that this should really have been looked at really quite early. I know the housing officers have flagged up various things really quite early when things happen, and that helps smooth things, particularly if it has to go through a judicial committee like this. On the other hand, I have, in my area, in my ward, I have residents who are very, secondly, I know Councillor Kadir has also talked to various taxi drivers as well around these issues and has relayed these issues, I know, to the licensing team and to other people as well. And we appreciate the effectively all small businesses who are often have to pay too high fees to various taxi companies, which is eating into your margins, so we're aware of that. The other issue I have, and my residents have, is that in my ward, there's a nice little bit by Great Saltons, and there's a significant number of taxis that park there perfectly legally, and they can, but for many of my residents, they have problems, and that's now affecting how they approach taxi drivers, to be honest. I've asked for meetings with ACCA Cars. Councillor Leonie Oliver in my ward has asked for meetings with ACCA Cars. Nikki has asked for meetings with ACCA Cars as well, and we have got the grand total of nowhere. That's not down to any of you as individuals, and as individual taxi drivers. We even have them from Wolverhampton and Havant and East Hampshire, which is one of Russell's points earlier. So, forgive me, sirs, I understand the issues that you face being small businesses, but I would love someone to have a chat with us and also the traffic team about those issues. I don't know who. Some of them may be here. But that is making my residents' lives a bit of a misery, and I'm not having my residents' lives being made a misery. And all it needs is a constructive discussion between the traffic team, us as Baffin's ward councillors, and the relevant companies. I don't blame the taxi drivers, the relevant companies, so that we can try and fix this. Because otherwise, my residents have been more than happy to whack up the charges by enough because they feel shortchanged. Not by the drivers, but by the companies. So now I'm not allowed to vote Councillor for Zackley, which is probably a bonus for everyone. I'll firstly be happy to arrange a meeting with Uncle Tom Cobley to fix that issue, but I do understand where Nikki is coming from, and despite the process problems that exist, if I were able to vote, I probably would have voted with the policy paper, but I can't, so I won't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Shah.
I'm sorry, Chair. My son fall down in school. I have to pick him up and take him to hospital, so I have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry to hear that. Okay. Thank you for your attendance prior to that. Okay. Now, is there anybody else that wants to make any comment in regards to the report before we go to the vote? Councillor Ashmore.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think the only morally, what do you call it, deficient bit on it is the fact that we're asking people that we're describing as hard-working drivers who are getting an increase and why it's necessary, but that, you know, the sex entertainment venues aren't going up. And I know it might be because they, you know, they contribute 5,000, etc., but that still doesn't sit right when we're asking people, even if it is 9 pence a day, a week, whatever. Is there a way we can make a note of that, or ask that the sex entertainment venue one gets reviewed even after this, because it doesn't look right, and I think that's what their moral abstentions to this is.
Sorry, Nikki, do you want to come back on that?
The calculations have been done in terms of the analysis. And again, I'll go back to the advice that Ben gave. We can't look at moral issues in terms of setting fees. I am undertaking the legal requirement of the licensing authority on your behalf to look at, are those costs reasonable and proportionate? And that's irrespective of the licensing regimes. I know that the sex establishments does bring rise to a lot of comments, but it's a regulatory regime, it is a licensed legal activity, and I would no longer look any differently to that function than I would private hire or amenities on the highway. We're simply making we do not need to recover the amount of income that we are currently receiving to meet our cash limit, to meet our budget, and that's why that proposal is there.
Nikki, one last point before I break down the voting. In regards to, there are obviously taxi reps and taxi drivers here. Did we actually have anything from Aqua? Obviously, they're the largest taxi firm that we have in the city. Was there any formal feedback from Aqua?
I did speak to one of the directors of Aqua Cars later last week. He had no comments he specifically wanted to make about the rise. Equally, I verified with Mr. Viv Young, another trade representative, whether he was going to attend, and he didn't feel that there were any issues on the report that he wished to make a deputation about.
Okay, thank you. Right, there are no other members indicating they wish to speak, so we will now need to try and sort out this voting situation. Right. As it stands, it was recommendations A to D as a collective, but there was a proposal earlier from Councillor Madgwick to split these into individually, I guess. There was a seconder, I believe. Yeah, Councillor
Sure, well, Councillor Madgwick said to delete it.
To what? Delete it?
Delete D.
No, I didn't. To split.
That was your first.
Right, okay, hang on. Right, let's just be clear. Councillor Madgwick, what is it you actually were proposing?
I would just like to split the recommendations into individual votes, Chair, please. Thank you.
Or maybe you can second each other. Okay, right, okay, so is there support? Can I have a vote? Who would like to split these into individual votes for A, B, C and D? Right, that's pretty clear then. So, we shall do so. Okay, you've heard, I mean, people have had their say, I think. We've given the opportunity to speak from the taxi trade. All of you have spoken on this. I think the officers have been fairly extensive in what they've said. The situation is pretty clear. I take the comments that have been made from people, and again, I give the commitment, and I'll speak to the taxi reps afterwards, regardless how this goes, to sort out a informal meeting for them with myself and anybody else that wishes to come along. strange talking to a politician say, try not to be political. I will try not to be political. I don't see this as being particularly political, but politics sometimes creeps into things. You can't help that. But I'll speak to you as an individual, as a councillor, and also a person who regularly uses taxis, and we'll see what you want to bring to me, all of you, at a future stage. That's all I can offer at this point, okay? I now go back to this. Right. So, first vote then is on recommendation A, that the licensing committee note the contents of this report and approve the level of fees and charges to be adopted. So, can I, all those in favour, with the exception of Councillor Sanders, who can't vote, all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. 4. Those against the recommendations, please show. 4. Marvellous. Right, okay. Oh dear, it's difficult being a Liberal now, because I have to make a vote.
With that in
Right,
mind,
okay.
Chair, would it be wise to defer?
We are in a situation where we had a split vote. In such a situation, it comes down to the chairman's casting vote. Gosh, right, okay. So I've been through this. The pressure's going to be on me. I think I'm going to be the bad boy after this. I voted for, so I will vote again for. So the recommendation that is carried. Recommendation B, that the approved fees be implemented with immediate effect, with the exception of those fees which are required to be publicly advertised for a statutory period of 28 days. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. Okay. Again, I have to use the chairman's casting vote and vote for that. Item C, that the Director of Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services be given authority to advertise where appropriate such fees and charges that are subject to the formal statutory consultation process. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Okay, again, this isn't easy. I appreciate I'm taking the vote. I don't wish to upset you, but I'll talk to you later on, sorry. So that is carried. Finally, item D, that the Licensing Committee approve the preparation for a further report for consideration in relation to the current policy for minimum age limits for licensed vehicles. Those in favour, please show. Okay, well that's unanimous on that one. So that concludes this meeting. I will now, if you promise not to stone me, meet with the taxi reps outside, anyone that wants to meet with me. For the rest of you, meeting is finished. Thank you for your attendance.